All right, this is Parrish Alford and John Pitts, and we are back at you with another edition of Talkin' with Boss. John is our sports editor with the Daily Journal. I am the Ole Miss beat writer. We come together on Thursdays if you're listening to Rebel Sports Radio, or maybe even if you're checking the blog, because we'll post this a little bit later. Talking SEC football, talking Ole Miss and all things college football for the next 20 minutes. John, just tell me a little bit. I'd like your impressions of the Ole Miss-Alabama game. You know, I look at this Ole Miss team. I see a team that is executing on offense, that is playing with confidence, you know, has gone on the road to, you know, not LSU, but has gone to a Texas team with a lot of talent, some turmoil, gone to Vanderbilt. Now, we see Vanderbilt struggle a little bit since then, but still a team returning a lot of starters, a lot of experience. What do you make of this 3-0 start, and what kind of chances do you give Ole Miss to go and play well at Alabama?
Well, Alabama's not a team in turmoil. Well, let me be clear about that whatever you want to say about them, there's some unease in the Alabama fan universe about the efforts that they gave against Virginia Tech and Colorado State. But you know, Virginia Tech and Colorado State were well-coached teams, even if they're not necessarily real good teams. And, you know, the Alabama that I would be fearful of is the willful Alabama that showed up after falling behind against Texas A&M. It gives them a certain level of confidence. They have great confidence in their quarterback and what he can do. They have some vulnerabilities, and they do have some vulnerabilities in the secondary and against the pass. But you've still then got to go out and execute in Alabama's place in a hostile setting. It will be a real measuring stick of Ole Miss progress, because I'm not really all that keen about any of the teams they've played to this point. So here's your real measuring stick against obviously the top-ranked team in the country and arguably the best team in the league as well.
Yeah, I think we see some vulnerability with this Alabama team. We see some inconsistency. And those are things that, frankly, you just didn't see the last 2 years. Okay, you're seeing some of that now, but you're also seeing, as you point out, the second half against Texas A&M, and that's a team that's ranked number 10 in the nation right now, not because of its defense, but because it's outscoring people. So, you know, I like Ole Miss's chances to go there and play a close game. I don't like their chances to win. You know, I like their chances to make it a fourth quarter game, which would be progress. It wasn't really a fourth quarter game last year. It was a three-quarter game. You know, there was a time in the third quarter when Ole Miss had the ball, and had they been able to drive down against that Alabama defense for a third time. You know, they sustained 2 long drives and punched them in for touchdowns against Alabama last year. Had they done that a third time in the third quarter, it would have become a one-possession game at that time. But they did not. I do like their chances to make it a fourth quarter game this year. But Alabama has been in a lot of fourth quarter games, John. You know, and there's just there's a savvy that comes with that. There's experience that comes from that. And look, I mean, you know, A.J. McCarron has 2 national championship rings on his fingers, and he's going for third. You know, he won't have enough years to play one for the thumb, you know, as the Pittsburgh Steelers said many years ago as they were going for a 5th Super Bowl. But there's a lot of water under the bridge with so many of these Alabama players, and they know how to win fourth quarter games. I just think I think Alabama pulls one out close, and I'm thinking it'll get to the fourth quarter with some measure of doubt. We'll see.
Alabama has thrown in a clunker at home 3 years running. In other words, while they have an admirable winning streak on the road, they have proved a little vulnerable at home, oddly enough. And if you look at the schedule, if you look at the games that they have to play at home, you know, this may be, other than LSU coming to town in November, a situation where if they were going to be vulnerable, perhaps they would. Of course, if they are sort of reading some of the things that are being said, they may have their jaws set a little bit differently.
Well, I thought I would see more emotion from Texas when Ole Miss was out there because, they were coming off that big loss at BYU, had just changed coordinators. But really, Ole Miss came out, hit them early, got ahead. I didn't see the emotion from Texas that I thought I would see. Now, Alabama, after the Colorado State game, had one of those players do the talking meetings. So in terms of that jaw being set differently, it really might, and we'll see. We'll see if there's more emotion from Alabama. They're going to get some guys back. They're going to be healthier. They're going to get the cornerback back, who Nick Saban says is his best cornerback. But getting him back and being at full speed, those might be different things. And there's been talk all week about the matchup of Ole Miss's wide receivers against that Alabama secondary. Ole Miss is really has more options, has more weapons at wide receiver this year. Fast starts from freshmen Laquan Treadwell and Evan Ingram at tight end, to the point that Dante Moncrief right now is not the leading receiver. He's got 11 catches. He's getting double teamed. He's drawing a lot of attention, and he's opening up things for teammates. But it's a good group right now, and it's going to get a little stronger when they add Vince Sanders to it this weekend. So that'll be an interesting matchup against the secondary. But basically, I think it's going to come down to running the football and stopping the run. Ole Miss has been pretty good in run defense. Alabama's been inconsistent, although you see the talent there. They have not been consistent running the football this year. If Ole Miss can stop the run and not have to constantly be aware of the play-action pass, if they have to freeze for an instant when McCarron sticks the ball into the running back's gut and then pulls it out, that really makes a difference in the passing game. If Ole Miss can stop the run and can run themselves, and it's going to be different for Ole Miss this week because they're averaging 250 yards a game on the ground, but they're going to have to run between the tackles. I just don't think they're going to get the corner against Alabama the way they did against Texas.
I think Alabama's defense will be delighted to look across the field and not see Johnny Manziel. Now, Bo Wallace is elusive, can make plays with his feet, can make plays with his arm, but he's not Johnny Manziel. And some of the things that Texas A&M did that made Alabama's defense look bad may mischaracterize to some extent the quality of what they can do, simply because there were some 1 in a million plays that went off there. I still like the idea of Kirby Smart having time to scheme up against what Ole Miss wants to do, and Bo Wallace cannot make plays to those receivers if he's running for his life.
Yeah, one of those was that jump ball that he threw down there.
Mm-hmm.
That figures in the stats.
Wow.
As well it should, but that could have been anybody's ball right there. Anyway, so at the end of the day, Texas A&M did roll up a lot of yards. They did get great receiver play from Mike Evans. What do you make of Bo Wallace's comments earlier in the week that hey, Ole Miss's receivers are better than Texas A&M's? Was that could that have been handled differently from Bo Wallace, John, or is bulletin board material in the 21st century overrated?
Well, I think that was him showing the confidence in his receivers that you would hope a quarterback would show, and that's good. That's good leadership there. And what the other school thinks about it be damned, really. I mean, I would think any coach in the league would take that Evans over just about any other receiver in the league, but as a group, yeah, Ole Miss probably does have a better group of receivers.
John, looking at the conference as a whole, Clemson beats Georgia. Alabama shows a few chinks in the armor. Tennessee gets obliterated at Oregon, and then Florida and Tennessee play in a nationally televised pillow fight. Is the SEC, is it down? Does the national championship run, does it end this year?
You forgot Missouri beating Indiana, though. That's a
Missouri.
Bellwether. That's a bellwether game. Yeah, perhaps, but it's still September, and I mean, who are we talking about that might be a contender, an Oregon team, and we have our pet theories about how we feel like that Oregon thing works when they cross the Mississippi River and have to play an SEC defense. One of these years now they'll catch lightning in a bottle with what they do.
And that's been proven once, and it was on their side of the river.
Right, and Oklahoma State is sort of in the mix, oddly enough. If you look, we sort of tend to disregard them a little bit, perhaps, but they're sort of in the mix. But still, if you look at the 5 or 6 best teams in the country, Ohio State. Anybody know what to make of the Big Ten this year? I mean, it still looks like to me you should see an SEC team in the national championship game. The only question may be which one.
What are your impressions of LSU right now? They look like the class of the league. Is that where we are? Again, you say it's early. Is LSU the best team in the SEC right now?
If they continue to play like they're playing, yes. But that's the thing, isn't it? I mean,
right.
They have, they seem to have put it all together, particularly in terms of being very balanced on offense. I think that will be I assume that this November 9 game in Tuscaloosa will be for the West Division Championship, and should be a cracker of a ball game. And that has not been, that's a rivalry that's very freighted as a result of having Nick Saban having coached at both schools, and LSU can come in as a coaching staff with the confidence that they're capable of going into Tuscaloosa and winning. So that'll be a Super Bowl game. Gosh, I sure hope it's not an 8 o'clock game. If I can just ask, please, how about a 2:30 start for that one? We'd like that.
Yeah, that sounds like a 2:30 start there. I think that'll have some CBS attraction that day. LSU at Georgia. Does LSU go on the road and win this game? I mean, I like the way they're playing defense right now. I think they can slow down Georgia enough for their offense to kick in, and LSU has played some offense now in the first few weeks of the season, not just against Kent State and not just against UAB, but pretty strong against TCU in the opener and also Auburn.
What a tremendous opportunity, though, for Georgia to make a statement and to get themselves right back into national relevance if they were able to pull that one.
Because there was relevance for Georgia until they lost to Clemson.
Right.
You stopped hearing that national championship talk from Georgia, but you're right. Just a chance to make a statement for Georgia. Zach Mettenberger going back to Athens, where his mother is on staff with the football office and got the week off. John, what do I have to do for the week off during football season?
I'm not sure. Yeah. Don't have a car wreck. That's my advice. That's no way to get a week off.
That's right. But anyway, big game in Athens. Elsewhere in the SEC, that is the big game. South Carolina is at Central Florida. South Alabama at Tennessee. Ole Miss and Alabama we talked about. Texas A&M at Arkansas. I was disappointed, John, in Arkansas at Rutgers, even though I've kept Arkansas at arm's length in my SEC rankings every week. I've kept them pretty low because it seems that they've not played a complete game. They've played some good defense, but they haven't really been as strong as you would expect them to be against a Samford, against a Southern Miss, against the schedule that they've played early on. Then they go on the road. They go to a Rutgers team that beat them last year in Arkansas, and get a big lead and can't hold it. And all of a sudden, there's middle of the third quarter and on, there's a comeback, and all of a sudden you're on the losing end of a 28-24 score. What do you make of Brett Bielema's first team?
Well, they had to know coming in that the previous staff was not able to do anything with the Rutgers quarterback the year before, and yet they let him tear him up again. So, maybe that's an outlier. Maybe that's just a weird matchup thing that got them. But look, I think Arkansas is playing with more confidence, and I think they've started to straighten out the roster. This is a bowl club, I assume. But they're several steps away from being a real player in the league.
Yeah, you mentioned Missouri earlier, and they have been impressive against not high-level competition. They've run up some points, but it is interesting to see Missouri get off to a fast start because this was, in many people's minds, a big year for Gary Pinkel. He's been there a long time, and they're winning, and they haven't gotten to the meat of their schedule yet. That'll come, but an interesting start anyway for Missouri. You had a column in Wednesday's Daily Journal, John, talking about paying athletes, paying football players, and while it seems to be a popular idea these days, a lot of people for it, you're not.
I'm not, because I don't, look, I always, and I didn't get into this in the column, but I think about those class action lawsuits where you bought a garage door opener and you're part of a class action lawsuit and you get a letter in the mail, oh boy, you're going to get some money. And then after the class action lawsuit is settled, you get like $8, if you're lucky. And I just think, and again, I didn't get into this part, but I feel like the mechanism by which schools would have to do this paying athletes thing would just add another layer of administration to it. And they talk about all these millions of dollars that supposedly aren't going into the pockets of the kids, never going to get into the pockets of the kids. It's just simply not going to work like that. There are some things they could do, and I actually think a pretty good idea would be to create a pool for catastrophic injury insurance, some things like that, for longer term care for guys that maybe have problems down the line. But if you think that $100 handshakes are a problem now, once you get in a universe where you're really paying players up front, then if you want to make a splash, you're going to have $1,000 handshakes. And I just don't, this is an example of where I don't think trying to decriminalize an activity is somehow going to make it more acceptable.
I was really taken aback by Arian Foster's comments, the former Tennessee running back, now with the Houston Texans, talking about, I got paid when I was at Tennessee, and he went on to talk about what a difficult financial state of affairs he was living in while he was a college athlete, and basically, and I'm paraphrasing now, said he had to have the money to buy food, and I just, it's hard for me to wrap my arms around that. I can't understand that. I've seen the food that's available at Ole Miss, and that's getting better over there as they make improvements and bring in a full scale dining hall there at the IPF. And as the father of a college student now, I'm paying for a meal ticket. And I know you got a full scholarship there. I just think the food was available, and David Cutcliffe coming out later saying that he didn't think that Arian was losing much weight during that time. So.
Well, it could be that he was spending his money on marijuana. I don't know. I don't know what he was spending his money on. And look, it's just preposterous to suggest that what exists now is some form of wage slavery or something. That's just not what this is. And I think that the idea that we're going to create a new specially defined layer of athlete, are you going to pay all that? You're just going to pay the revenue athletes? You're just going to pay the basketball players? What about the tennis players? What about the soccer players? What about the cross-country runners?
Yeah, do you get paid in accordance with the money that your sport makes?
In baseball, where a guy maybe is on a quarter scholarship plus, Pell Grant or whatever, what does he get? Right. It's madness. It is... it reminds me a little bit of a certain federal program that we're all struggling to figure out because we were told we'd have to vote on it to find out what was in it. And I think this would be just equally a hellish mess if they try to do that.
Well, it does open up a lot of questions. I remember covering the SEC meetings in Destin a couple of years ago when Steve Spurrier said, he challenged his football coaches, come on guys, ante up, we make these big salaries, let's put up a pool and pay these players a little bit. They're thinking about their guys. They're not thinking about the big picture. And it's good. You want a coach to think about his players. You want him to look out for the welfare of his players. But what about those cross-country runners?
Well,
right.
Actually, as I'm sitting here thinking, maybe what's needed, in the NFL, what has brought parity to the table is a salary cap, a hard salary cap that sort of makes everybody a little more competitive. Maybe what's needed is a hard salary cap on coach salary. I mean, at the point at which you can only make X amount, then would you, then suddenly you won't have these bidding wars for guys. Nobody would be talking about Nick Saban going to Texas if Nick Saban couldn't make any more money at Texas than he already makes at Alabama, most likely. So you may have given me my next call on.
Good stuff, John. We'll catch up with you next week.
All right, look forward to it. Actually, I think my next one is about